Welcome to It's All About the Questions, where learning to ask the right questions can help you achieve lifelong success. Now, here to help you ask all the right questions is award-winning author, international speaker, and business strategist, Laura Stewart.
Good morning, afternoon, and evening, everyone, and welcome to the show today. It's always an honor and a joy to be here with you. And for those just joining me for the first time, I've been doing the show since 2015. I love the show. I love being with all of you from all around the world, from many, many different time zones, which is why I always say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. And some of you may not watch live, so I never know what time of the day or what day of the week even you may be watching or listening, if you're a pure audiophile, to this show. So today I have an incredible guest that I'm going to be chatting with for like the next, we'll see how long, but most of the shows average around an hour. I love being able to introduce you to these guests that have impacted my life, sometimes for very short term, but in the particular case of this guest, for decades since I've known him. And he has made an impact on my life in many, many ways. And he talks about this idea of relax, focus, succeed. This is his book, Relax, Focus, Succeed, Balance Your Personal and Professional Lives and Become More Successful in Both. And, I'm sure a lot of you, as I'm talking about this book that I'm holding up for those listening on audio, you go, is it possible to relax while I'm trying to grow my business, grow my career, live my life? How do I focus with all the demands that are pulling me in 1,000 different directions all at the same time? Is it possible? I don't know if you think it is. I know at times I thought it wasn't until I realized that, yes, it really is. And my guest today, Karl Palachuk, he actually lives this. I mean, he's not one of those people who walks the talk. He lives the talk. This is the third edition of his book, as you can see. And for those who can't see, this thing is so dog-eared both on the top of the book and at the bottom of the book. And it's just powerful to me how somebody who has grown and sold multiple businesses and helped businesses from one-man shops all the way up to Fortune 500 companies change structure, change culture, help executives learn how to take a breath. Literally, in some cases, take a breath, pause, reflect, decide what the focus really needs to be, and then create unbelievable success in all areas of business and life. So please welcome to the show somebody I call friend, I call mentor, somebody who has taught me a different way of living my life for decades now. And he probably doesn't even know that he has done that for me. My friend, Karl Palachuk. Welcome to the show, Karl.
Thank you. And I'm embarrassed almost. You're so nice to me.
You probably didn't know I think about all those things about you after all these decades, did you?
Well, and you were talking before we started recording about the time when I made a presentation. It was like, that was over 20 years ago. I'm just saying.
Yes, it was. at the HTG peer groups with Arlen Sorensen. And there was the session you were doing. And I think I started tearing up. And you came up to me afterwards and you gave me a copy of the book. And you said, I really think this would help you. And that was the first edition. And that was the moment I realized that I was putting all the stress on myself and that I needed to think differently about how I interacted in the world. And I was reading the book, one of the dog-eared sections, which I think I told you, and we had to postpone this a couple of times because your book is a slow read in a good way. I kept getting stuck. Normally, when I have a guest on my show that has a book, Karl, I can read the book in 24, 48 hours and have all the important things, the questions I want to ask. I can't, and this is the third edition. I've been following your work for a long time, right? We've talked about that. I kept going, I need to think about this. I need to think about this. I need to answer the questions.
Good.
which I hope is what you want your readers to do.
Yeah, it's funny. In some ways, it's a very easy read. Like it's not
Right.
difficult. It's not like complicated stuff. But I
No.
hope it's meaningful. And if you have to keep stopping and thinking, well, then I'm doing my job.
Yeah. And it is an easy read in terms of the material is very accessible, but you did make me think. And what was fascinating was because of what I was reading, I said no to a job,
Oh,
a
wow.
contract that somebody wanted to give me. I realized that the stress every time I did something with them was not in alignment with who I am. And some integrity things, a few other things were popping up. And it literally stopped me. And somebody at that company said they wish they could be more like me and respond versus react.
Well, and it's interesting, both in small business, I've been in small business forever, but we've also dealt with companies that have 100 employees, 150, 200. And no matter how big they get, and I've worked, like you said, with Fortune 500 companies, that they somehow believe they can't turn down business. And it's like,
Yeah.
there is a such thing as enough, right? There was a point where you could say, I don't want to make money from those people. There's enough other people in the world who will buy my services that I don't have to work with people I don't like. I don't have to work with people who abuse me or my employees or who just don't take me seriously, who just like, oh, that's a contractor. Treat them like garbage. It's okay.
Right.
I don't want to do business with them.
And yet it's one of the hardest things for entrepreneurs, especially when they're starting out. You and I both consult in those kind of realms, helping people grow their businesses. And it's one of the hardest things to do is to say no to business. Why do you think that is? And how can you help people begin to shift that mindset?
Well, it's funny. I almost think it's a fault in the human brain, that there's something about needing to have enough. And, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right?
Yes. But my listeners may not. So
okay, so Maslow talks about that you have to take care of certain things first. You have to have food and shelter before you can do anything else. And once you've got food and shelter, well, then you can pursue things that are more personal, more intellectual. You can protect your family. And it's really only when you have all of the other needs met that you can really take care of yourself intellectually. And so, we have to be grateful that we are blessed to live in the 21st century where
right.
Most of the people that we interact with probably are able to spend time not only with their family, but above that, to be able to take care of themselves intellectually. But I think we never lose sight of the fact that we need that base. We need the food and the shelter. And that there's something in our, ancient brain that says, if you don't take this job, you might not have a house to live in tomorrow, and if you think about it intellectually, of course, that's not true, but we're talking about something that is well below the intellectual layers, right?
Right.
So,
and yet in some people's cases, not taking a job, not going to work one day could mean they can't feed their family or they lose their house. So we're not downplaying for those people, but overall, I mean, this concept you're talking about, it's so real. It's
right. And
so vivid.
It's one thing, when you're starting out and you have 0 clients. Okay.
Right.
You can make the argument you need to get that money to, feed your family. But when you've got 50 clients and you've got whatever, $500,000, $1 million in regular revenue, and you have for the last, 10 years, chances that you're going to starve if you don't get one more client are very, very slim. And
right.
It's also the case, a lot of people by then, I hope, will have fired at least one client who was arrogant, abusive, wanted too much, wanted more than they were paying for, paid their bills late, whatever. There's lots of reasons to get rid of a client. And once you get rid of a client, I think you have a different perspective that I really honestly don't have to work with everyone who shows up.
I used to, with my staff, every year we sat down and looked at every client and decided, do they stay or do they go? Sometimes we had to do it during the year if things, developed or whatever. But every year we looked at it, and invariably we let go one client every year.
Yeah. We did a very similar thing. And I actually had every single person in my company, even when I think we had like 17 people. I had every single person in the company rate every client. And
Right.
some of them would say, given my job, I never interact with those people. But they all interacted with some clients at some point, and they all had impressions. And it was more than just, do they pay their bill? It was, are they nice to work with? Are they good people? Do they have interesting projects? It's not all about just being nice. It's also, I want challenging work. I want my employees to be challenged. I want them to grow as individuals. I wrote a blog post recently, that everybody is on a trajectory. Everybody's on the way to somewhere else. And where they are in your life right now, your employees, your clients, your children, right? Everybody is on a path. And today is one moment along that path. And so you need to treat your employees as if there's a future for them. And it may not necessarily be with you, but it needs to be as positive as possible. And the same thing with clients, and the same thing with vendors and so forth, that
Right.
there's a different perspective on the world.
That whole concept of what you just were talking about, I feel like that is intricately linked into your life's work of relax, focus, succeed. It feels like the relax and focus part. And yet, when I read the 3rd edition of the book, you don't start out with succeed part. You don't really start out with focus, although you do mention that was one of the keys to being successful, was gaining the focus. It's really hard for entrepreneurs to relax about anything, because, having been an entrepreneur multiple times, coached entrepreneurs, right? God forbid you stop for a second. Number one, your whole body is in shock.
Right.
And number two, it's like, well, what if I don't answer that phone? But you define relax so differently than I think most of us define relax. So I want to, based on that conversation we just had about letting go clients and building a business, how do you define this idea of relax? I mean, you caught me multiple times when you walked out while we were doing prep to, get a cup of coffee and whatever. You joined. I was taking some deep breaths because I find that really helps me. And by the way, Karl has a number of free breathing, guided breathing and other up on his website, which it's karlpalachuk.com. But talk about this concept, because it is so hard for people.
Right. Well, I think one thing is, a lot of people, when people first hear relax, focus, succeed, literally the most common first response is, I need more of that.
Yes.
And it's not the focus and succeed that they're tuning into, right? It's, they do want to succeed, obviously, but when they say, I need more of that, it's the relax part. And for me, in that relax is all of the things involved in recharging your batteries, taking downtime, taking care of yourself, all of that. I don't know about anybody else, but for me, I love to get up in the morning. I have a great front porch with a covered awning, and then I have a great back porch with a covered awning. And one or the other, I like to be outside with a cup of coffee and just enjoy that time. And it is not productive. It doesn't make me money. I'm not writing proposals for clients. I'm not working on anything except myself, my own sanity. And I think many people see relaxation and downtime as the reward for their hard work, which
Okay.
is why It comes at the end of the day, at the end of the week, 2 weeks a year, whatever. They think it's okay. That's the reward. I don't think of it that way. Turn it around the other way. I think of it as a key element in your success. If you don't put the relaxation in, if you don't recharge your batteries, you won't have the energy it takes to go through your day, go through your week, go through the year. And, even on vacation, if you know how to relax, you're not going to waste the first 3 days of your vacation getting out of the work mode and into the relaxation mode, because you know how to be in the relaxation mode. And that's a power. That's a skill.
And yet in the book, you have multiple different types of relax, which I struggled with when I first read it, because, relaxation can mean breathing, meditation, prayer, exercise, quiet time, journaling. I mean, how do you define those different things, and how can somebody pick? Like, how do you, other than obviously get this book, everybody, and read it. And we will be raffling off one copy of this book that I will send to somebody that Karl has generously donated. And I've already bought copies and mailed copies to several friends of the book already.
Thank you. And it's never too early to buy Christmas presents. I'm just saying.
Exactly. And back to school. For kids heading out to college, high school, whatever. Really, really great stuff. But this idea of relax, as you define it, explain that to us and how people can begin, because relaxation can be really stressful.
Well, especially today when people get up with an alarm or whatever they got a screen in their bedroom. Then they put on their headphones or they put on a soundtrack and they make their coffee and they never turn off the screen. They never turn off the input device until they go to bed with the screen watching something before they fall asleep. And it's just, it becomes harder and harder because if you don't practice it, you don't know how. And, your breathing exercises are such a great example. Once you have a technique to relax, it's portable. Most of them, you can take them anywhere. And that's even true of exercising. I remember one time, a long time ago, there was an SMB Nation in Amsterdam. And one morning, we're at this airport hotel. And one morning, I got up and they didn't have food service yet. So I was going to go across the street to a truck stop. Even though nobody spoke English, I figured they've got pictures on the menu and I need coffee, it won't be difficult. Anyway, I saw people from the SMB community who were there jogging in the snow in March and, in Amsterdam. And all I can think of is those people are dedicated, but it's also true. That's how they relax. That's how they start their day. And everybody's got something, whether it is gardening or woodworking or knitting or jogging or whatever. Everybody has something they do. And the one thing that I would add to what they do is take your earbuds out, stop having input. It's okay to take a walk around the block without listening to anything, without trying to learn something, without having a podcast on, without doing something. And I know people who mow their lawn with headphones on because they cannot take a minute of their life without learning something. And at some point it's counterproductive. Your brain has to have time to process that stuff. You cannot, human beings are not machines. You cannot take all this input in and just process it all and then go on to the next thing. That's a complete waste of time, actually. You need to process it. You need to take time and you need to find out what works for you. And there is something that works for everybody.
And then you have something called quiet time where you have that input and you're processing it. How is that different?
Well, for me, and again, it's different for everybody, but I encourage people to have a routine where they have quiet time. And for me, it's in the morning. I like to, like I said, I sit down with a cup of coffee and a notepad, and I've got something I'm thinking about, and I might take some notes, but then I meditate. I close my eyes and I just, or I watch the sunrise, and I just try to be in the moment and not think about anything, and the ideas come floating in. And it is that time when you relax, when you're awake, that the ideas really can take root. But again, you can't be distracted by a screen or audio. It just needs to be you and the beach and the waves, or the flowers and the birds, or whatever it is. And so that's, for me, that's what I do. And some people do prayer, and some people do meditation. Other people just sit in a chair, And I recently just sold my hot tub, but for the last, 20 years, I like getting up in the morning and watching the sunrise while I'm in the hot tub. And then there are these bushes behind my house, and the birds wake up, and come out of the bushes one at a time and fly off. And so, it's like this whole morning routine. But it's an opportunity for me to open my brain and let it solve problems while I'm awake. And I don't know if you want to go into my theory about your brain solving problems while you're sleeping and all that.
I do, because I have the worst nightmares, and I know it's my brain trying to work through stuff. I don't sleep well. That's just a whole other problem. But yeah, I would like to, because you have a quote in the book that I actually wrote down. And I think this will lead into your brain working through stuff. Making a commitment to a new way of life is not simply whispering in exhaustion that something has to change. And that to me was mind-blowing. I think it leads to this conversation. So go ahead, talk about the brain and that related to this comment, because I spend so much time in that, oh God, I can't do it anymore. I have to make a change.
I worded it that way, is every human being I know has been there, has been at that point of exhaustion where they're just like, this can't go on. Like, something has to be different. And so with the brain, I don't know if there's any scientific evidence for this, although, I'm always studying the brain to find out, different things. But I believe that when you're asleep, your brain processes all the things from your day, including all of the problems. And I liken it to a file cabinet full of cards, right? And all day long, you got a problem, and you throw the problem, you pull out the card, and you throw it on the floor. And then you got an answer for something, or a solution or an idea, and you throw that on the floor. And just all day, your problem, solution, problem, ideas. And then when you sleep, your brain sorts all that stuff and puts it back where it belongs. And every once in a while, it picks up an idea and a problem at the same time. And it says, wait a minute, these two go together. That's the solution, or at least that's the start of something that matters. But you're asleep, and it puts the cards away. And when you wake up, you have forgotten that you've solved that problem. And the thing about quiet time and meditation is that it allows your brain to have that opportunity to relax and think about all of these different things at the same time and solve those problems while you're awake, and you will remember it, which is why I have a piece of paper in front of me. I always have a pad of paper in front of me, because I don't know, maybe I won't solve any problems this morning, but when I do solve a problem, I want to be able to write it down, because, I don't know, Richard Tubb, the brain is a terrible place to store information, right?
I love Richard.
So, we forget things very, very easily, and we've all forgotten really great ideas. And that's why a pad of paper and a pencil is a good thing.
When I had my tech company, I'd be driving my car, and I had Guardian Angel computers. I had the most amazing office manager, Jennifer Walker. And I'd have these brilliant insights while I was driving because it was Connecticut and you're always on a road somewhere, stuck in traffic somewhere. And you couldn't exactly just write stuff down. And it was before the days of smartphones where you could record messages. I used to literally call her while I was stuck in traffic. Write this down, write this down.
It's interesting. The best office manager I ever had was named Jennifer. So yeah, she was my office manager for 8 years. Yeah, she was awesome.
All right, I want to go a little bit deeper. One of the other quotes that really hit me inside the book was, between reality and your perception of reality, your perception is more important. Explain that and how that relates to relax, focus, succeed, business, life, everything, because the world is in such a crazy place with reality and perception. And
yeah,
I
and
often,
true.
yeah. And I see this so much with entrepreneurs or people who are working in corporations or even families, that reality and perception gap seems to hit. And yet you're saying perception is more important. Why?
Well, and I think if we all think about it, we know this. We've all seen the situation where you watch a conversation and I watch a conversation and we come away with different conclusions about what just happened. And sometimes, you see people that they go through something and one person will say, I'm really glad I went through that. I learned so much. It was great. And another person will say, that was the most horrible thing I could possibly ever imagine, right? The difference is their perception, because the reality of step by step by step, what actually happened is not different. It is people's perception that is different. And you can change your perception. It's literally like glasses, right? You can change the lens that you use to look at the world. And we all know people who are pessimists. They're like Eeyore, and it's going to be another one of those days. It's like, well, you can have another one of those days, or you can have a great day. It's your choice. And I really honestly believe that. And many people, with all the troubles in the world, I've had people say, oh, a lot of people are going through a lot of tough stuff now. And I'm like, really? I mean, are they, or are they just worried that they will go through tough stuff? And, when the economy turns south, yeah, there's a lot of pain, but there's also a lot of people who the pain hasn't hit them, but they act like it has. And it's because in their brain, that's what they believe. And you have the ability and the right, and I think you have the duty to see things in a better light. And it is your choice to do that or not do that. But the world really does get better if you look at it with, I guess, slightly rosier glasses. And, Mark Twain has a great quote about, I think it's to the effect of, almost everything I worried about in my life never happened. Right. So, and that's what all of us, I mean, if you think about it, everything you worry about, almost none of it ever happens. And, you got to worry a little, you got to be prepared for bad things. But for the most part, especially, both of us come from an IT background, but even in any kind of management, you have to be prepared for when things go wrong, and you got to have a checklist. And that's why we all know how to get out of a house in a fire, right?
Right. I hope everybody here knows how to get out of a house in a fire.
But I've never had a fire in my house, right? I've never had to evacuate. But we all know the rules. And so you have to have some kind of preparation, but you can't overwhelm it. Like if I woke up every day worried about a house fire, I would have spent decades worrying about something that just absolutely never happened. And so you have the choice. You are in charge of this, and you get to decide what you're going to worry about or not worry about today. And I think it's super powerful. And so, the perception versus reality, again, like I say, I think everybody knows this, but when you go out there and say, I can do it, then that's true. And if you go out there and say, I can't do it, well, that's also true. You've determined it before you start, whether you can or cannot do something. And that's a choice you can make every single day. And even when things are bad, and, I've gone through clinical depression. I've gone through divorce. I've gone through financial troubles, on and on. It's the same thing everybody else has if you live long enough. And, on the worst days, I have to acknowledge two things. One, I put myself in this situation one step at a time. Like, I got here
Okay.
because I walked here one step at a time for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, whatever it might be.
Yeah, you just didn't transport in. There
Right.
were steps that led you there.
And the second thing is, I will be somewhere else in 5 years. Things will be better. My life will improve. I'll get over the financial troubles. I will, get on with my love life. I will, improve my career or my relationships with people or whatever it might be. I know I can create a better world because I just can. I'm a human being. I know that I can set a goal and then work towards it. And that doesn't mean, I say, I'm going to climb Mount Everest and make $100 million. Okay. Maybe not tomorrow.
It might take a year or two, but
But,
okay, so can we unpack that a little bit more?
Sure.
Because, I've learned about my listeners over time, and I know there's somebody out there right now feeling so overwhelmed by whatever's going on in their life. They're at that whispering and exhaustion moment. They can't see their way out of whatever they're going through. They want to take some step forward that might lead them out of this dystopian nightmare that their perception says they're in, when in reality there may be windows opening, but they can't see them. What are some steps, Karl, that they can begin taking? It doesn't even have to be a baby step. It could be a nano step that may help them begin to open breathing, open a window, open, start cracking a glass that would let them see light or something. Can you help give us some on that?
I think one of the things that is the most powerful is, I always like this exercise of looking backward and looking forward. Even, again, like I've been depressed, gone through periods of depression. And even in the depths of depression, I can look forward and say, this will get better. I can look backward and say, there was a time when this was better, right? And I know if it happened before, it can happen again. And if other people have done this, I can do it, right? And that's true with everything else. That's true with business challenges, and it's true with personal challenges, kids and whatever. And another thing is just, it's easy to give the advice and very hard to do as a human being, but you can stop worrying about things. You can think about something else. That is a choice you can make. And I know for many people, it's like, no, I can't. Well, you can. Yeah. You just can. And I would say the biggest thing that we fail to do is to ask for help. We all have friends. We all have family. We all have people who care about us. And even though we think, I would be embarrassed to tell them that I'm going through this, or I don't want anybody to know that I have this challenge, or I don't want my employees to know that I'm going through this difficult time, or the company is having trouble. Whatever it is that you're worried about, somebody will listen to you and will help you. And, there's even people who get paid to do that. But, in the 21st century, there are, apps that you can download. I don't know if you've ever seen the 10% Happier.
Yes, I subscribed for a while there. I struggled with some of the voices because, I have my ear issue. But yeah, 10% Happier app. That was great.
I mean, there's a lot of apps that will help you improve your attitude. And I also think, whatever people think about this, unplug. You just have to spend more time with yourself as a human being. And, I think when you take stock, it's really hard for people who do have a house and do have food and do have a job. And, it's really hard to say, everything is wrong. We all have problems, and eventually we all work through them. And, it sounds like I'm not being very personable, but I got to tell you, you do have a choice of how you attach the problems in your life. You do have those choices, and it might be difficult, but again, ask somebody. You'd be amazed how much people want to help you,
Yeah.
especially if they say, "Oh my God, I didn't know that you were going through this," And even if it's stuff that you think is embarrassing, other people don't think about you very much.
Not as much as we think they do.
Right. So, they're going to say, "Oh, I didn't realize you're going through all of that. If there's anything I do to help, let me know." And they're sincere. Now, they don't want you to necessarily dump on them and have them become your therapist, but, they have ideas. They might have gone through a similar kind of thing, and like, whether it was worrying about firing a client or firing an employee, or, there's a million things that we worry about. Everybody's gone through something, and in many ways, I believe that as human beings, that's what we're here for. We're here to help each other get through this stuff.
And yet we tend to isolate
Right.
often when we're going through crisis versus reaching out.
And the more worried we are about it, the less likely we are to reach out. And we just have to remember that, that so-called lifeline, it is there, right? And just because you don't think about it doesn't mean those people disappeared. They're still there.
It's a concept you talk about in the book as well, about failing and how we react to when we believe or perceive we're failing, that we don't want people to know about our failures. I recently had a guest on my relaunch episode with Brandon Webb, Navy SEAL sniper instructor. Amazing man. If you've not read any of his books, Karl, read them. They're amazing. His latest book was about raising kids using Navy SEAL mindfulness. You'll love this. He brought mindfulness into SEAL sniper instructors school, right? Because they were failing out of sniper school, but they passed SEAL training, which was insane, right? And then he realized that they got in their own ways mentally and brought mindfulness in. And, he talks about failure and he talks about fear and how to move past it. And my brain's like, I got so excited about it, I almost forgot where my link was. I wanted to go with it. But this concept of failure is so wrapped up into stopping many people from even trying anything. And when you talk about failing in your book, you mention that it's okay. And you can go into this some more if I'm misquoting it, because obviously you remember how dog-eared the book was and all these notes I've taken on this whole book. But that was something that stuck with me, because a good friend is going through something and they don't want to talk to anybody, and they're almost pretending the failure isn't real. And for years they pretended the failure wasn't real, which got them deeper and deeper into it. Some people may not want to start something like this because, say they're dealing with physical stuff, like with me, with my ear, where I can't be around sound. I often don't want to go out of my house because the pain is so intense. Or I've tried to go to a restaurant, even to pick up takeout, and I almost black out on the floor from the noise. But yet you say, keep trying. And if you can do it one day for 1 minute, that's great. Talk about this idea of, I'm not going to call it failing forward, because it's not failing forward. It's picking yourself up, yes, but it's also reframing, but it's not reframing. And I'm concerned that my listeners who are watching or listening to this episode may be so stuck in, I can't try it because I I've tried before, and this works in business too, right? We cannot do that. We tried that 10 years ago and
Right.
it didn't work. So can you talk about this concept of fail, get up in a way that refames it or something? This is a struggle for me to get the words for it. So hopefully you will have better words for it.
Well, I thank you. You know, you mentioned mindfulness, and there's even different definitions of mindfulness, but ultimately it comes down to stopping and looking around. And, like I talk about, waking up in the morning and watch the birds come out. I could be worrying. I could be thinking about money or the bills or whatever. But I try to be in the moment and think about what is actually happening. I hear this sound, there's a truck, there's a bird, I see this. What is actually happening and what is not happening in my life in this experience right now? And, like it or not, there's a war. There's several wars, but, there's a war going on. But right now, it it doesn't affect me in the sense of I don't have to worry about a bomb hitting my house. I'm not there. I'm here. I'm having this experience right now. And when people are worried about failing, part of what they have to do is take stock and literally say, okay, what's real and what's not? What exists and that I can see or touch or experience? And how does that fit in with the picture? And a lot of times we mix our concerns with our experience and we somehow get them confused and we think things are worse than they are. It's almost like we amplify it. And so much of the book is dedicated to the fact that whatever you put your focus on, it gets amplified and your brain goes to work for you doing what you asked it to do, which is focus on this thing. You said this is important. Let's focus on it. Well, you unintentionally said it was important by worrying so much about something. And your brain now is like, okay, she thinks that's really important. So we're going to spend a lot of time worrying about that. You have to stop your brain and say, whoa, that's not as important as I thought. Let's focus on the future. Let's focus on the next step and the next step. And what's one thing that I can do today to move this in the right direction? And it's almost like you have to stop yourself and take control of your brain and literally say, it's okay to not worry about that now. It's okay to say right now in front of me, I can do this. And, no matter what challenges people have, business challenges that are just weighting them down and they can't get over it, or personal challenges, they all know they can get up and go to a meeting. They can drive from here to the school and pick up the kids. They can do this one thing. Everybody knows you can do that. And what you need to realize is, and then you can do the next thing, and then you can do the next thing. And, the world, your future, life is made up of this moment, and then the next moment, and the next moment. And in a lot of ways, that's what mindfulness is. You can lead your life mindfully by literally saying, one moment at a time, what is next? What is next? What can I do? How can I move this forward? You have that power, and it's a very strong power.
And what about for the type A personality who feel that if they're going to dive into relax, focus, succeed, and follow different things and start answering the questions, because remember, the show is all about the questions. And man, you pose a lot of amazing questions in here to get people to think.
Thank
who
you.
feel that their only possible way to succeed is to go all in 1,000%. And they can do that for several days and then like a crash. And they're like, well, no, I have to just stop, because if I can't go all in, then what's the point? How do you speak to those people?
Yeah, it's interesting. The first edition was 20 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And since then, in many ways, things have just gotten easier and easier to be type A. It is so easy now. There's all these videos, 10x this and 100x that, and everything has to be on all the time, da 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 da, da, go go go, and that whole culture is literally designed to burn you out. And in many ways, it's sold by people who ignore or don't tell you the stories of when they burned out. You and I both know people who work themselves so hard that they can't stop until they get sick and they don't have any choice. And now they take 3 days off unscheduled because they are in bed ill from working so hard. And you probably know, I certainly know people who have died from stress at too young of an age because they just couldn't shut off. And, people literally die of heart attacks and stress and high blood pressure from putting too much pressure on themselves. They do absolutely every single day die. And it is not a joke, and it is not something that happens to other people. It happens to the people who overwork and refused to balance their lives. And, my motto for everything in life is nothing happens by itself. And that's certainly true with balance. Balance will not wander into your life on Monday morning. You have to do something to put it there. So, you have to take action and just realize you can always do one thing. You can always take one step in the right direction. You can always take 1 minute and relax a little bit. And I think it's chapter 2 still. Workaholism is like the biggest killer of people in America. And it is another one of those things that's kind of hardwired into human beings to believe that if you just keep working more, you will get more done. But at the same time, we all know there's a point at which your work is useless. Like, I do not want a doctor operating on me during the 12th hour of a shift, right? Not interested. I want the doctor fresh in the morning, first thing. I want to be the first patient. And, at the same time, I don't want my clients to think that I am doing their work, as a coach at midnight or 10 o'clock at night, or after I have just been completely exhausted by the day. I literally, I have a person who does my tax returns. And because of the tools she uses, I know exactly when she has my files open. And she has never worked on my tax returns after 7 o'clock at night. And,
Okay.
It's sort of like, I don't want her doing my taxes at midnight, right? Do somebody else's taxes at midnight. But she actually leads a pretty balanced life, and she doesn't do anybody's taxes at midnight. But it's every industry, whether it's, people who do taxes or people who do IT consulting or everything else, they all have excuses of why they have to overwork, and they don't have any choice, and you don't understand.
For me, I'm better off from doing something at 10 p.m. at night versus 9 or 7 in the morning. Been that way my whole life, and
Right.
now I just don't sleep well at night. But that morning time for me is not my most brilliant time. The later in the day.
You have your period where you're good when you start, but 8 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours later,
Right.
your productivity is not as high.
Yeah. All right. So let's expand a little deeper and further on this whole idea of workaholism, failure, trying to relax, focus, succeed. You want to get started. There's a concept in your book that was yet another, like, oh my God, about comforting ourselves. You have a new grandbaby. Well, not quite so new anymore, but still a little tiny grandbaby. And babies learn, if parents allow them, to learn to comfort themselves if they wake up in the middle of the night and, like, you don't show up every 30 seconds to hold them. They learn tools, whether it's sucking a thumb, putting their foot in their mouth, the binky, whatever it may be. You use this concept of adults really haven't learned to comfort ourselves. We use external tools, maybe alcohol, medication, food. For some people, exercise. And I knew somebody that literally was killing themselves from exercise because that's how they comforted themselves. How does one begin to relearn to internally comfort oneself so that all those other things that we've talked about through this episode can begin to, let's say, unwind, relearn? It's not even unlearn. It's just relearning your perceptions of things, because we've said that reality and your perception is more important, because you can't even see the reality if
Right.
your perception clogs it so much. So how does one begin to do that, Karl, as we're beginning to wind down towards the end of the show?
Well, one of the big themes today is all about micro habits and, that sort of thing. And it is really pretty genius to think about, you can just change one little thing. Again, you got to start somewhere. And especially with workaholism, you can set artificial limits. I have these lights in my office that are on an internet timer, right? And one goes off at 5 o'clock and the other at 5:30. And it's not so bad in the summer, but in the winter, if I'm here at 5:30, it's dark.
Yeah.
And but it's my way of saying, hey, it doesn't matter how long you've been here. It's time to go home. It's time to, and for me, home is, at 12 feet that way. But,
Right.
I
Another room.
yeah, I have a ritual. I literally stand up and say, I'm going home now. I say those words. And, it's a habit I have that allows me to say, I'm going to break from this and go to that. And in the same way that, you have to prioritize everything in your life, you have to prioritize not working. You have to accept that it really is worth your while and develop some habits. And, it might even be that you ask somebody to say, hey, call me at 6 o'clock, or let's go to dinner, or whatever. There's got to be ways to make sure that these things happen. And a lot of the things that we use to comfort ourselves that are destructive, we need to replace them with something else, which we consciously choose. But we also have to acknowledge that we might need some serious help. We might need either therapy or a life coach or just a partner to call on who will say, hey, you didn't exercise yesterday. Let's go to the gym. I will meet you there, whatever. And, again, all those human beings in our lives are there to help us. And just as we're there to help them. And, we need to figure out, what are the habits that I need to change? And what are the habits that I want to adopt? And make lists. And you can literally say, oh, scratch out this one, add that one, scratch out this one, add that one. And start as small as you want. Any change in the right direction is a good change. And, start moving. And again, it's one of those great things. As soon as you start saying, it's important to me that I break this habit. It's important to me that I, drink less alcohol, get more exercise, whatever it might be. Once you tell your brain it's important, your brain says, okay, how are we going to work on this? What can we do? And you begin, your radar goes out to, oh, I could do that. I could do that. I could meet these people there. I can do the exercise, whatever it might be. You can change your habits. And there's, like I said, right now there's 27 books on, how to change your habits. So,
very many.
yeah, and they're all good that I've read anyway. It's a good thing to take control of your life and say, I do control this and I can make some changes. And even a habit that I've had for 30 years, I can change. And we all know people who quit smoking. I just I just found out that a friend of mine had smoked for 60 years. He's
60 years. Wow.
82, and he just quit last year. So, he literally has been smoking for 6 decades, and
That's
quit.
a long time.
Yeah. And he quit because he had a, health scare, and he realized, oh, if I want to, reach 85, 90, this is one big thing I can get rid of, But, so habits, no matter how hard entrenched they are, can be changed. You can do something else. This is your life. Your life is your palette. Do whatever you want with it.
And in your book, you say, just pick one thing to start. So you don't have to do everything. Pick one thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing a lot of people do. They go in all in, like, oh, okay, I'm going to exercise. I'm going to do this. I'm going to get up earlier in the morning and I'm going to do that. It's like, no. If you pick 12 things, you will fail at 12. Pick one, succeed at that, then add another, succeed at that. It's like everything else. We do things incrementally and we improve incrementally, even if we're conscious about making changes in our life. We get very excited about making the change,
Yeah. In the book, you even said, if you want to start exercise, it could be take a 1-minute walk. It doesn't have to be, I have to take a 30-minute walk or a 1-hour walk or a 5-mile hike. Commit to walk for 1 minute and slowly increase it. I love that concept, Karl, because it is about relaxing into the exercise, not stressing.
Once you stop this, whatever you're doing, you stop this and you go outside and you walk around the block, 1 block, you have added a habit and you've taken away a certain amount of momentum of just sitting in the chair, right? Even if it is for 5 minutes. And more and more research is showing that even 5 minutes of exercise does you good. It's shocking that, the older you get, the more all of these tiny things make dramatic differences, and so it's pretty easy. Anybody who says I don't have 5 minutes to walk, it's like, okay, but you got 5 minutes to play a video game. I guarantee you got 5 minutes to watch a cat video. And, so you got 5 minutes to walk.
True. All right. Well, we're coming up on the end of the show. Is there anything that I've not asked you that you wish I had asked you?
Well, let's see. I don't know. I do think that the discussion of the reticular activating system and kind of, how you can hack your brain to make it double down on all of your efforts for everything. I think that's very powerful. And, I got a whole chapter on it, but I also added some exercises in several chapters. And I've started doing that in my presentations, and it's extremely effective. When you start by saying, we're going to talk about this, and you ask people questions and you get their brain to start thinking along those lines, they sort of activate all of the things in their brain related to that topic. And then when you make your presentation, they're sort of primed to absorb more of it. And again, it's so effective in so many areas of your life. And again, it's a power you have to take control of yourself and make things happen. So thank you for having me. I know I'm one of the first guests after the reboot, and I'm honored to be so.
It's been a joy having you here. And we are giving away a copy of your book. So for those who have been listening to this episode, how about this, Karl? They need to post on social media on this episode, wherever they're watching it, or make a comment on the audio podcast, or they could reach out at karlpalachuk.com or laurastewart.com and say one piece, something that they learned or a step that they're going to take to help them. And I will pick somebody and I will send them the copy of the book. Does that work for you?
Sure. That'd be great.
Okay, cool. We're going to do that. So you just need to reach out.
The audio, it's in production. So with luck, it'll be out within the next couple of months. We'll have and it'll be on Audible.
Oh, great. Because I have had people asking, because there are some friends of mine that prefer audiobooks and they're like, it's not out yet. I don't want you to send me the hard copy.
Wow. Well, you can send them both. I mean,
I could, but they really prefer the audio versions of the books, because some people that's their preferred method of stuff. I want to thank you again. Oh, and you have resources on your website, karlpalachuk.com. Want to just briefly say some things that are out there for people?
Yeah, well, one thing is that from there we link to my Relax, Focus, Succeed videos, and I have a whole blog at Relax, Focus, Succeed. So just go to karlpalachuk.com and click on blog, and you'll find it there. And I have a newsletter that comes out once a month, and it's not a lot of BS, and I try to be useful and interesting. So I'd appreciate it if everybody sign up for my newsletter.
I read it from start to finish every month.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show, Karl. I'm really, really grateful.
Thanks for having me.
All right, everybody. That was the amazing, my friend, Karl Palachuk, who has been a mentor of mine that he didn't know he'd been a mentor of mine for several decades. His book, Relax, Focus, Succeed, is available wherever books are sold. Balance your personal and professional lives and become more successful in both. And I'm giving away a copy of this book, not my dog-eared, many dog-eared pages copy where I have notes and everything in here, but I am giving away a copy. So comment on social what you learned from today's episode. Comments on, if you're just listening to the audio, share this episode with your friends, your family, your coworkers. Let us know what you're doing. Keep in touch, because what we talked about today interacts with so many aspects of your life, and it's helped me in all aspects of mine, working on the relaxing, the focusing, and it has helped me succeed. Even when I've let go of things, that helps me succeed as well. So thank you for being here with me today. Remember, the right questions can change your life. I really wish you nothing but the best in your lives. Have a great day, everyone.
You've been listening to It's All About the Questions, starring Laura Stewart. Connect with Laura at it'sallaboutthequestions.com and download a free workbook that will help you ask better questions starting today.